All right, folks, welcome to our preview of this weekend's Premier League football. I'm Emma Jones and I'm joined by Liverpool fan Paul Machin from the Redmen TV. Thanks for joining us, Paul. And Statman Dave to look at all the upcoming games in the Premier League. Now, as our guest this week, Paul is so involved with the Liverpool football world, we're going to focus in particular on Liverpool v Arsenal, but we're also going to be talking about all 20 Premier League clubs. Make sure you let us know what you think of this video in the comments below. So let's start with the weekend's biggest game, second versus fifth from last season at Anfield. Paul, 3 wins from 3 so far. Are you happy with Liverpool's performance?
Yeah, look, you can't really complain at the point on the board and the first bit of silverware in the bag, to be perfectly honest, because that's what you're aiming for. You know, we've for so many years we've looked at Liverpool sides that have put together great swashbuckling performances, but have fallen short time and time again. Glorious failure kind of became the watchwords at Anfield. So no, it's been going really, really well. Inevitably, it hasn't been perfect from Liverpool so far, but whereas I think we see reactions online with people going, oh, well, Liverpool played a high line, defensively more suspect perhaps than last season. For me, I look at it so early on into the season and think, I'd rather Liverpool have room for improvement. I'd rather be able to look at the obvious things that Liverpool need to get better at, because that means that, Liverpool have got at the best start of the season they can pretty much have had, and yet they can get so much better as well.
And also it's quite flattering as well that even though maybe they're not performing at their peak, they're still getting good results.
Yeah, 100%. Because once again, I've seen Liverpool sides probably play better, but come out with worse results. I mean, winning the Super Cup on penalties, that could have gone one way or the other. But once you've got the win, it doesn't matter how you got the performance. The trophy's in the cabinet. You get to look at it periodically. You know what I mean? It gets to be a notch on your belt, a bit of a shield against social media banter. Yeah, no, but exactly. But no one looks at it that way, do they? And that's the thing. And people can look at that Southampton game last weekend and say that Liverpool could have thrown it away. That could quite easily have been a draw at the end. Danny Ings gets a very good chance, puts it wide, and that's 2-2, and people are talking about a disappointing Liverpool. They rode the storm and they came out with all 3 points, so yeah, please.
But they do take on a fairly decent Arsenal side, don't they, Dave?
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. I think you're looking at both of the front threes of Liverpool and Arsenal, and that's where the strength lie. Of course, Firmino, Salah and Mane have got great records against Arsenal. Mane's been directly involved in 8 goals in the last 10. Salah's got 4 in 4. Firmino's got 8 in 8. But then you look at that front line, you're looking at Nicolas Pepe, 22 goals in Liga last season. Aubameyang, 22 in the Premier League, and Lacazette, 13. So it's one of these battles where it could be a real sort of squashbuckling game, back and forward, attack versus defence in a way. So it's going to be exciting.
It is. It's kind of the tried and tested version against the new version, isn't it? The new 3.
100%. And you look at Aubameyang. Look, he's one of the best centre forwards in world football without a doubt. And any fears that he might not have been able to replicate that in the Premier League, completely blown away. He was brilliant last season, and he's been brilliant so far as well. Very much their main man. And Lacazette, not necessarily in terms of the same level of goal return, but obviously caused Liverpool big problems last season, particularly at the Emirates. And then Nicolas Pepe, there's an inevitability about him performing at Anfield because he was so heavily linked with Liverpool over the summer. There'll be a small section of the Liverpool fan base who have got their tweets preloaded about how Pepe destroyed
drafts.
100%. So no, so much potential I think in Arsenal's front line, but I think you're right to say you can't look past the proven quality that Liverpool have got.
So we've got Liverpool's lineup from their last game on screen. And as we're recording this, the latest injury news is Alisson is out, Keita is a doubt, and they also have long-term absentee Nathaniel Klein missing. So Dave, how do you think the side could set up against Arsenal?
Well, I think we know that the 4-3-3, Paul, is the go-to Jurgen Klopp shape and system. But I think there's a few question marks or maybe rotation points in there. Number 1, Oxlaide-Chamberlain, obviously started against Southampton. Is he going to make the starting lineup against Arsenal?
I think Liverpool are moving towards more and more of Oxlade-Chamberlain, but if you look at the Southampton game last weekend, a really important step forward for him, and I think people forget, a year out with his ACL injury. He was there through pre-season. He looked promising. We've used him in the front 3 a couple of times in pre-season. We saw him in the Super Cup start on the left wing, and then obviously started in midfield against Southampton. I think we will get there, but I still think it's a little bit early in his rehabilitation for him to go 2 games, go back to back. So I would strongly suspect Jordan Henderson will come back into the midfield. I mean, look, the captain for the start, and since being moved into that more attacking midfield, I think Jordan's been absolutely flawless. So a big game like this, I think Fabinho will come back in the 6 and Henderson will come in. But Oxlade-Chamberlain, with that game under his belt, I think gives us a really interesting option off the bench.
So that's the sort of side to it that you can have that explosion of pace through the middle and attack that area. So in terms of the midfield three, we've got Henderson, Fabinho, Milner is going to be in there. Wijnaldum, goals or that work rate?
Yeah, I suspect probably Wijnaldum comes back in for this one. It's one of those games. It's a shame that, as I mentioned, Keita is out injured because I think he's been primed for these big games, and he's the one I think will be the natural fit on the left-hand side of the midfield three, which is currently kind of in rotation between Wijnaldum and Milner. Milner, he had the head injuries, had stitches last week. I think he'll still run through brick walls for you. As a Leeds fan, I'm sure you know plenty about that, James Milner. But no. I think it would be Wijnaldum just in terms of the rotation to come back in.
Interesting again that the front three picks itself in a way. The question marks with Liverpool is their fullbacks, sort of position where maybe there's some rotation there as well.
I wouldn't think so, to be perfectly honest. I mean, there's a slight argument for Joe Gomez to come in at right back because Trent has suffered against the top teams, and I say that like he's like it's a unique fault of his. When you come up against world-class wingers cause you problems. Nobody criticises the full-backs who come up against Liverpool's wingers and says they're not very good defensively. People go, brilliant, Mane's excellent, Salah's excellent, don't they? So, but we saw Gomez there again in the Super Cup started right back, so it's certainly an option particularly if Arsenal go with Pepe from the start in this one. It might be worth looking at, but I just think Liverpool perform better with Trent on the pitch. The balance of the play, when you've got two attacking fullbacks, two guys comfortable in taking possession of the ball. Gomez is fine, but he is more limited going further forward. So I'm not sure that I think there's a debate there, but for me, I think it's pretty clear that Trent's the best option.
So, Paul, is Matip then your first choice partner for Van Dijk at the back, do you think?
I think Klopp has shown preference towards Gomez in the early part of the season, and I think he just wants to get him back in because I think his ceiling is so high. Such a young lad, so much talent and so much pace, which if Liverpool are looking to play higher up the pitch in terms of a high defensive line, against the pace of Aubameyang, Lacazette and potentially Pepe, Gomez actually might be the solid option for this. But I think on form, I think Joel Matip has been, at times I think he's been better than Van Dijk, particularly the end of last season. So a really interesting one. It depends kind of what we're looking to go for. But I think the preference, if he doesn't play Gomez at right back, I think he might well see him at centre back.
I think that's the interesting side tactically as well. If you're looking, as you mentioned, Paul, with the combination between those two players, is that you have that ability for Van Dijk to maybe play a little bit more aggressive, and then you've got the cover of Gomez in behind. The question marks I would have with Liverpool is, I feel like the areas, both sides of their central midfielders, is where teams are exploiting them. We saw Bundia do it. We saw the wing-backs from Southampton do it. I don't think there's an issue with full-back in terms of defensive sense. I think there's an issue in terms of maybe Henderson not playing versus Southampton. Those types of players, maybe the shuttlers that you're saying, need to give a little bit more protection for the fullbacks. Yeah,
absolutely. And the Jordan Henderson thing, I think he needs to rediscover the balance of that role a little bit, because when he's playing on the front foot and he supports the attack, he's absolutely sensational. We've seen him. He can hug the touchline wide right if needs be. So he provides space for Trent and he provides space for Mohamed Salah as well. But you're right, in terms of then covering Trent, what we saw a lot of times last season against really good sides, we played with more of a flat midfield three, and a lot of this was with Milner and with Wijnaldum, who effectively end up covering as auxiliary left back and right backs to cover the counter attack or what have you. When you've got Fabinho in there and you're playing a slightly more offensive midfield, I don't know whether we've quite discovered how we counteract that. So yeah, it's definitely a potential exploit for Arsenal if they wanted to try and get in there.
So if we take a look at Arsenal's 11 from their 2-1 win over Burnley, the latest as we record this is that defenders Bellerin, Tierney and Holding are expected to be out. But in better news for the Gunners, Xhaka and Ozil could return. So Dave, how do you think Arsenal can counter Liverpool's attacking threat?
I think that's going to be the big problem for Arsenal in the way is the lack of pace on the cover. You're thinking David Luiz, Monreal, Sokratis, they're all ageing defenders. Yes, Maitland-Niles is a quick player, but he's more of an attacking player going forward. So I think the question is, how do Arsenal deal with that? It's going to have to be that defensive solidity around them. But Paul, you're thinking that David Luiz versus Firmino, that's going to be a battle where you're dropping off into the space, and then there's space going to be behind David Luiz.
Yeah, and two fellas who should know each other pretty well, of course, from the Brazilian national setup. The thing about David Luiz, I think, as much as we know, and it's been well publicised, some of his weaknesses, concentration issues or what have you, maybe commitment issues, he's very good in possession of the ball. And one thing that Liverpool, if they choose to go down the route of counter-pressing, it's much harder to target a player like David Luiz because he's so good on the ball. He's not the weak link in that defence. Now that might move over one, and you might find that it's Sokratis or Sokratis, however you choose to. If you want to be philosophical about it. So that could potentially be a solution for us. Maitland-Niles always seems to perform well against Liverpool as well. I rate him very, very highly, but the big criticism of that Arsenal squad is in the defensive quality. Do they have enough there? Have they just basically balanced themselves to blow opponents away, to score one more goal than you kind of thing? And if that's how they're going to do things, then that could very well play into Liverpool's hands, because let's be honest, we talked about it earlier, in terms of proven attacking talent, Liverpool have got a sensational front three, arguably the best front three in European football. At home as well, I would fancy Liverpool's chances to create chances against that back four.
I think in terms of how you've seen David Luiz play for Chelsea, one of the big things with the counter pressing, as you mentioned before, you squeeze in really high. In fact, David Luiz was one of the players that actually found out how to play over them. I think there was a few passes from centre-back from David Luiz to Pedro, if you remember, for Chelsea, going over the top. And if Aubameyang does start on this right-hand side and Reece Nelson is selected with Joe Willock, the two young players, that could be a real threat. That if Liverpool squeeze too high, you're looking over the top, clean for own goal. Aubameyang 1v1 this season is looking fresh.
Yeah, and to be fair, that's how teams have caused Liverpool problems so far this season, is just getting the ball over the top and chasing them behind. So that's something that Liverpool are going to have to be very, very wary of. Going direct against Liverpool has shown, I don't want to say a soft underbelly as such. I think it's maybe slightly overpronounced. But if you are looking for problems with Liverpool, that's the one that you'd probably try the most, because look, let's be honest, when this Liverpool side gets up to full speed, there aren't many weaknesses. So if there is one to exploit, it might well be that, but it might be only a very short window with which to exploit it in the season.
So obviously we're having a look at the starting lineup from the previous game, Dave, but do you reckon that they will start Pepe this game?
I think this could be the time. You look at, he played 44 minutes against Burnley, created the most chances for Arsenal, most dribbles on the pitch. The big thing that you're going to get with Pepe, Arsenal will probably tweak their system. Pepe is going to be on the right, Aubameyang on the left-hand side. And you'll see that motion of Lacazette dropping off the line, similar to Roberto Firmino, and Aubameyang and Pepe making the runs in behind the defence. The added threat that Arsenal now have is with Ceballos at number 10. Ceballos was absolutely brilliant in the recent game, and his ability to play-make from that area could really open up the angles for looking for Aubameyang and looking for Pepe, and it could be a problem for Liverpool on the break, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the good thing that Liverpool got going for them, with a week between the games for us, which is the most relaxation I think these Liverpool players have had in about 18 months. Hopefully, I think Virgil van Dijk has started to creak a little bit in terms of his overall fitness. He played so much football for us. I'm hoping that they're fit and fresh and ready for this. And we mentioned earlier, Joe Gomez could be very useful to this, because if Liverpool are being overloaded or they're being asked to cover in behind, having as much pace available to you as possible is a good way to counteract that. But no, I'm fascinated to see how Ceballos fits in with all this, because it's his work rate, I think. The fact that, I hear Arsenal fans talking about it, like in astonishment that a guy who plays in the 10 can actually put a shift in as well. Like it's a totally new concept to them. So if they've got a guy with that skill who's also prepared to put himself about, then yeah, he could cause us problems.
And the big thing with Ceballos, you look at his stats last week, most passes, most chances created with Pepe. You're looking at the goal that Aubameyang scored. He lost the ball, pressed, won the ball back, Arsenal went to score. So it's going to be interesting, because I think Fabinho is a player that hasn't really been got at by anyone.
Mm-hmm. So we've got both of the teams here, Dave. Where do you think the key battles are going to be?
Well, I think it's this area. It's Liverpool's defence, and it's the three midfielders, the two centre-backs in this central area, that if Arsenal do play narrow, they do look to make the moves in behind, as we mentioned before, with Lacazette's movement off. It's can Fabinho, can Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez, or maybe even Joel Matip, deal with that threat? Because I think this is it's quite an interesting one in a way, that there's a lot of duality of the threat. Look, we've got Lacazette coming off, and then Ceballos will enter that number 10 area. So flexibility and Liverpool's ability to cover different spaces is going to be very, very important.
Yeah, and I think it's telling with that Liverpool midfield three, all three of those guys have played the six for Liverpool and done it really, really well, and held, anchored midfields on their own. To put them all in there together gives you an amazing amount of energy, but also gives you defensive coverage as well. The Ceballos stuff is going to be very interesting for me because I don't think Fabinho's really been at the peak of his powers so far this season, and you do kind of see it with big lads. It takes us a little while to get up to full fitness, is what I'll say. I'm still waiting. So I think he's been at times a bit sluggish. He's played a lot of football already, so that is another potential area. If his fitness levels aren't quite, and his mobility is not quite up to the peak of his abilities, then there's an opportunity there for Ceballos to maybe nip in and cause him some problems.
I think the last little thing there, I think Fabinho is used to winning tackles off players when they're standing up, retaining the ball, then moving it. Ceballos is one of those players very, very difficult to knock off the ball, a little bit like Luka Modric. And again, that opens up another angle, not only in a defensive sense, but it's also Liverpool, dealing with his ability on the ball. We saw Burnley players trying to rough him up. Just roll the pressure. Yeah,
but also one thing about Fabinho is he's huge and he loves a good slidey. And that'd be an interesting physical test because you're right. I think in a Jordan Henderson kind of situation, if he was playing the 6, Jordan likes to stay on his feet. He likes to win the ball back with little nips and toes around the corners. Fabinho will go to ground if he feels it's the best way to do things, and he will be properly physical. So it'll be a really different test for Ceballos.
Right, so we can see the rest of the weekend's fixtures on the screen as well here. So I'm just going to talk through this with you guys. First off, Friday night game, Aston Villa against Everton. What are we saying there, Paul?
Well, let's be honest. We could really, have our weekend buoyed by an Aston Villa win there. That's going to be an interesting test. I think the spirits are high at Everton at the moment. Their fans are in really high spirits. As they've got so many good things going for them. Aston Villa, I think they'll cause teams problems this season, but how quickly it is they get settled down and get settled into the season. So I think Everton will take this. It wouldn't shock me if it was a draw.
Well, Paul, you've got to remember, no fullback in Merseyside has more assists this season in the league than Lucas Digne.
Yeah. That won't last.
Ouch. Right, then we'll have a look at Saturday as well, the early kickoff. Norwich, who of course you guys absolutely dominated, against Lampard's very young Chelsea side. What are we saying about that, Dave?
I think Mason Mount's going to be key to this game. Was fantastic. Could have arguably scored a hat-trick against Leicester City if he'd taken his chances. Norwich, though, impressed me against Liverpool, were brilliant against Newcastle. For me, I'm going to go with a Norwich win here. I think Chelsea are in sloppy form. Norwich's fullbacks have been fantastic going forward. So, yeah, it's going to be a big win for the Canaries.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tough one. This is a real test for Norwich because I think they've won a lot of people over so far. And it's whether they're now being slightly more scouted. Will Pukki be able to have the same kind of impact? Probably, hopefully. It's one of the things. But I think Chelsea, I think getting battered by Man United led people to believe that Chelsea were dead when it's very much not the case.
And we've got the Brighton-Southampton game. What are you saying about that, Paul?
I tip Brighton to go down this season, and having seen Southampton up close, I think they're a potential. I don't think it's going to be as tough for Southampton as maybe people made it out in pre-season. I'd back Southampton.
Really? What about you?
I think it's going to be a tough game. I think it's the counter-pressing versus the possessional play. This is a big test for Brighton. They'll match them up in shapes and systems, whether they can play through. We'll see whether one of these teams. I think this is a massive game for both teams. It's a relegation 6-pointer, third game of the season.
And here's one that you're going to have your eye on, Dave. Yeah. Man United, Crystal Palace.
Most exciting team in the Premier League at the moment, right, Paul? Playing some good football.
Against Man United.
Unbelievable. But I think the big thing is the change in role of Paul Pogba. He's turned the ball over more times than any other player in central midfield this season. So it is this slightly more defensive work. We saw how well he was a bit calmer on the ball. He won the penalty, of course. He missed the penalty, but that happens in football. Marcus Rashford now is designated penalty taker, so I expect United to comfortably beat Crystal Palace at home.
They haven't really had a great start, that's why.
Yeah. Exactly. Crystal Palace
what are you saying?
Yeah, look, I'd like to say it was a Crystal Palace's day potentially, but look, it's at Old Trafford. United should have too much quality. It could end up being one of those situations where if the likes of Zaha or whatever just stick a weldy in, as we saw Crystal Palace beating Man City last season. That's probably where Palace's main threat will lie.
And Chris Wilde has recently promoted Sheffield United, who I think have been so impressive, so impressive, taking on Leicester.
It's going to be tactically really interesting. I think this is going to be a real test for Chris Wilder. We've seen the centre-backs overlap. We've seen all these positional changes, difficult to play against, a really hard-working team. Yeah. But Leicester City with James Maddison have shown real quality in the opening Premier League weeks.
So?
I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw.
Ooh.
I'm going to have to back big Brendan Rodgers in this one. I just think they're going to have a very good season. And, if they want to have that level of season, then they're going to have to start to go away to teams like Sheffield United and get the win.
Watford, West Ham, Dave.
Two teams that are struggling at the start of the season. I think they've both not hit the form. Sebastian Haller hasn't been really involved. His injuries dropped him out as well. We saw Hernandez score his replacement. A lot of questioning with West Ham. And Watford are in absolutely woeful form. Yeah. They finished the season with I think 1 win in 10. They look like a side that isn't together that we've seen before. And I've gone with the Watford manager, Javi Gracia, to be the first manager sacked this season.
Really?
Because Watford are if you aren't doing well, they will get rid of you as manager. So I'm going to go for a West Ham win. They're going to turn their form around and start to kick on.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, the logic's all perfectly sound. I just think the power that you can have at Vicarage Road sometimes when they really get it going, I think could be a turning point. And look, if you're going to turn it around, then best place to do it is at home.
Well, we've got the Sunday games as well. Bournemouth probably not looking forward to their 2 o'clock kick-off against Man City.
Who would be at the moment? Kevin De Bruyne, unbelievable performance against Tottenham Hotspur, the 2 assists, but he could have had 5, 6 assists. His ability to create from that sort of David Beckham area is going to be far too much from a really inconsistent Bournemouth side.
I can't see anything other than Man City absolutely wiping the floor with Bournemouth, though I will cross my fingers and toes that it doesn't happen.
We move on. Spurs against Steve Bruce's Newcastle. They aren't going to be looking forward to that either, are they?
No, I don't think so. I think Harry Kane again looks like he's back in form. August, he's now scoring goals in that month. Newcastle, for me, are just absolutely atrocious. The way they play, the style, how they create, how they attack. I can't see anything going well for them this season. Spending £40 million on Joe Linton, who is a very talented young player, but is going to consistently score you goals? No. And that is the issue. Their defence is rubbish, their attack is rubbish, their midfield is rubbish, and Tottenham look good with their new signings.
Sorry, Brucey. What are you saying?
No, I have to agree. I think it's a real culture shock, isn't it? They've gone from a world-class manager in Rafa Benitez to Steve Bruce, who's just got a massive head. So that's what he brings to the table. Like doing now.
And a Premier League winners medal, Paul.
No, I don't mind Steve Bruce, but I think there's major bigger issues going on at Newcastle, and in some regards, maybe it's one of those things they could just do with a few negative results just to help get a bit of a groundswell to the protests that will happen off the pitch. But no, you can't see past Tottenham Hotspur for this.
Agreed. And Wolves take on Burnley as well on Sunday.
After another Europa League game, I think it's really going to start to sort of count for Wolves. Their record after the FA Cup last season was poor. Playing a midweek game, going to a game at the weekend, and Burnley look like they've kind of got their mojo back, that aggressiveness, the ability to score goals. And Ashley Barnes is so in form that you couldn't write him off scoring against Wolves.
I go for a draw on this one, to be honest. I think Wolves, I think you're right to say there's obvious potential limitations there, but again, such an intimidating place to go as well is Molineux. So no, they might have enough quality to tip it. Again, I'll probably go a draw.
Now, before you go, Paul, we've got one last thing. The fabled Squawka challenge, right? You can see the current leaderboard on screen. Sam Lee and Jamie Jackson, 24. Jesse Lingard, 7. Stephen Howson, 6. I'm going to give you 60 seconds to name as many Brazilian football clubs as you can, starting now.
Sao Paulo, Cruzeiro, Atlético Mineiro, Chapecoense. Flamengo, have I said them? Botafogo.
Come on, Paul. You're on 7.
Oh, Christ. Oh my God, it's completely gone.
I feel like we need the countdown clock.
Oh my days.
You've still got like 30 seconds.
I know, honestly, I flew out of the gates and now there's complete. No, never give up. Atlético Mineiro, Cruzeiro, Sao Paulo, Flamengo, Palmeiras, have I said them?
8.
Oh, Christ. No, I think that might be me.
Well done, Paul. You got 8. Thank you so much for coming along. Tell the people at home where they can find more of you, Paul.
Yes, I've got my own YouTube channel, that's Machin TV, and of course on Liverpool's #1 independent channel, Redmen TV as well.
It's been a genuine pleasure having you here. Thank you. Remember, this is a new show, so we want your feedback in the comments. We've got a break next week, but after that, we're going to invite guests from other clubs along each week. So please do put suggestions in the comments for people you'd like to see on here. Subscribe if you're new for more videos like this, and we'll see you next time on Squawka.